I kicked my toxic family out when they tried to steal my new house from my brother, and after years of being the family scapegoat, I finally got revenge. Then everything exploded: public confrontations, fake rental contracts, police, family drama, and a cheating sister-in-law whose meltdown ended in spectacular fashion. Now my brother lives in my old camper, and my parents are desperate for my forgiveness. I'm a single guy in my early 30s. My brother Ben, 28M, is a few years younger than me and already has 4 kids. The first came at 22, the second a year after, the third 2 years later, and the fourth just a few months ago. Ben's wife, Harper, my sister, and I never got along. She's always flaunting an attitude like she's better than me, then cries victim if I push back. She can turn on the waterworks in a heartbeat and is a master at getting sympathy. My parents and Ben are enraptured by her, even though they know her real personality. She's good looking, I'll give her that, but so insufferable that I could never be attracted to her. Harper refuses to get a job, even though she's got a degree, and my mom, Mill, babysits the kids all day anyway. Their entire household relies on Ben's income, and they can't afford to live anywhere besides my parents' place, a cramped 60s 3-bedroom. Privacy's impossible with all of them under one roof. I was always the black sheep. Ben, despite being only a couple years younger, was clearly my parents' favorite. He developed a superiority complex, knowing I'd get punished if I tried to defend myself against his antics. He got most things by default, unless relatives called it out. It happened enough that my parents moved us 150 miles away, so family only saw us on holidays. Ben was physically abusive, hit on my first girlfriend so much she dumped me, and found my every misfortune hilarious. If I complained, my parents told me to deal with it. Only when they needed to keep up appearances did I get equal treatment. Birthdays and Christmases were especially awkward when they had to pretend. They also threatened to take away all my stuff if I exposed what was really happening. The day I turned 18 and left, before high school even finished, my parents essentially celebrated. Couch surfing and the low contact that followed was a relief. They didn't even show up at my graduation. No big loss. After that, contact was almost entirely limited to holidays, like the rest of the extended family. Then the 2020 pandemic hit. I lost my job, and my roommate lost his too, which meant I couldn't keep our beloved 2-bedroom condo. My roommate moved back with relatives, and I hawked most of my stuff to prepare for homelessness. In hindsight, I'd rented above my means, but I loved living large until the world crashed down. My fallback? My truck. I bought a $1,000 camper to put on the bed so I could live in it temporarily. That temporary stint lasted way longer than planned. I thought maybe I could park at my parents', since Ben and his family were still there, but when I asked, my parents said no room like always. Unless I paid them the going rate for a full apartment. I was saving every penny of unemployment I could, and their deal was a ripoff. They called my camper an eyesore, refused, and Harper found my predicament hilarious. Ben joined her, calling me a homeless bum. So, my first night, I crashed in a store parking lot, scared I'd get robbed. I didn't sleep much. I couldn't go to other relatives. Too far, and my friends all lived in apartments. I didn't want to leave my area, so I just toughed it out. My mail got forwarded to a friend's place. Finding places to park was hard. Beggars, druggies, and people yelling about my camper's blight were a daily thing. I even had a fake HOA, Karen, try to chase me off a block with no houses, getting aggressive when I questioned her. I moved to avoid drama. Power was a pain. I had to sneak extension cords into outdoor outlets when necessary, just to keep my fridge running. Not proud, but survival comes first. My only solar was a small recharger for my phone, no generator. After months of nomadic life, I finally landed a new job in the next city over. I'd sworn off retail, but this was the closest thing I could find. I was still getting unemployment, but I needed a workplace and routine before that ran out. Bored out of my mind in the camper, I'd spend days reading, movie binging on a portable DVD player, carefully tracking which public bathrooms I could use. Wish we had public bathhouses like in Japan. When I started my new job, I basically lived in the building's forgotten backlot. My boss_company owner didn't mind, since it meant I was always available. He let me pull the camper off my truck and set up, even provided electric and water. In return, I did free work on Sundays when the place was empty. I showered at friends' apartments or a gym. The camper only had a portable toilet that I tried never to fill. I knew the night security guard by first name. We became friends. The camper heated well in winter thanks to a small heater, but summers were brutal. I had to buy an old portable AC. With so much overtime, I learned new skills and got promoted to supervisor halfway through last year. The higher pay made me realize I wanted stability. Losing my condo made me want a real foundation. I found a 3-bedroom manufactured house just 2 miles from work and managed to get it $10,000 below asking price. I blew nearly all my savings on the down payment and barely got the loan, but it was worth it. I could park my camper in the backyard, which I set up as a possible guest room. When I was all moved in and finally settled, I foolishly bragged about my new home on Facebook. That's where the circus began. Out of nowhere, my parents, Ben and his whole family, showed up for a tour. I never gave them my address. No friends have confessed to leaking it. Maybe they followed me from work. It wouldn't surprise me. The second I opened the door, they stormed in like tourists, poking around and smirking, especially Harper. It made me uneasy, and later I figured out why. My parents kept commenting that my house was too big for someone without a family. Ben kept noting how it was closer to his job and way bigger than my parents' place. Red flags all around. Ben pulled me aside, and suddenly everyone else went to the porch, which is when it clicked that this was coordinated. Ben said my house was too much space for me and that he and his now pregnant again wife, Harper, needed it. Plus, my house was so much closer to his job. He suggested I just live in the camper. After all I'd done before, while his family took the house. No mention of rent. Mind you, he has a decent job. He even mentioned house rules and curfews, and that I'd need to give notice before entering their house. Unreal. He kept steamrolling over me, ignoring my efforts to speak. There was just no way. Sure, I'd consider housemates for the mortgage, but never them, not after the way they'd treated me my whole life. I realized I needed proof in case they escalated, so I started recording with my phone. Ben couldn't care less about my recording. He just kept ranting about why they deserved my house, finally stretching out his hand for a deal. That's when I'd had enough. I loudly said, "Hell no." Ben stumbled back. I almost never yelled at him because I'd get punished for it growing up. But this was my house. I stood up and told him it wasn't up for grabs. Not my problem. Ben kept having more kids and couldn't afford a place. I wasn't responsible for housing them. Ben got up in my face. "You don't deserve this house. I need it for my family." I laughed and said I'd earned my home. Ben started shouting, "You don't even have kids. You don't need the space. Just give it to me." I told him I wasn't giving him anything. He'd never offered rent. Even if he moved in, I'd pay the whole mortgage and not even be able to live in my home. Then Ben pulled the trump card, claiming he didn't owe rent because family comes first, and that my parents already said I'd be giving them my house, like they had authority over my property. I said they have no power here. Right on cue, my parents and Harper burst in, surrounding me and trying to intimidate me into caving. There was screaming, chaos, and endless repetition of, "Just do it for Ben." I made it clear they had no say over my life or my house, and I'd call the police if they didn't leave. Harper wailed about being pregnant again, claiming I couldn't do this to her. I told her I had no obligation, and she was entitled to nothing. She lost it and hit me in the face, then tried to attack me further, but Ben held her back while she shrieked about scratching my eyes out. I raised my phone, announced I was recording, and said I'd call the police if they didn't all leave. My mother threatened that I had 1 week to come to my senses. I told them not to come back. Oh, and I made sure Harper knew her assault was recorded and that I'd press charges if she tried anything else. Update 1. As warned, this is unbelievable, but it happened. After I kicked my family out, I posted the whole fiasco on social media, knowing the first thing they'd do would be to twist it and paint me as the monster. My preemptive strike and my video proof got most relatives on my side immediately. The flying monkeys tried, but the wider family wasn't fooled. One anonymous caller ranted that I was a bad brother for not making way for a family man, but I ignored them. A week later, my parents showed up with Ben at my door, pounding the bell and door. I'd installed chain latches and blocked the door. My dad and Ben demanded to be let in, but I told them everything was on camera and threatened to call the cops. My mom turned on the fake sweetness. "Are you ready to let Ben move in?" I told them to bug off. She started crying about doing it for Ben. I bluntly said I don't love Ben. He was terrible to me for years, and my parents encouraged it. Told them to leave or I'd call the police. They exited, but suspiciously easily. But the next Friday, I came home to Ben and Harper moving in. Moving truck and all. Harper smugly told me, "Mommy says it's fine." I locked myself in my truck and called the cops instantly. Harper pounded on my window, shrieking that I can't do this to Ben. She threatened to key my truck, all in earshot of the 911 operator. I told her I'd sue if she did. When police arrived, Ben and Harper locked themselves inside my house, and the lock had been drilled out. The busted lock and tools were right there. Ben and Harper produced a fake rental contract. My signature wasn't even close. I called them out for fraud and pointed out I'd sue and involve CPS if need be. Deigned, Ben turned ashen, and Harper theatrically cried, tearing up the fake contract confetti style. Officers told them to clean it up. The children sobbed. Harper milked sympathy with her usual routine, but I didn't budge. Ben ranted that I'd denied them a home, but the officers told them to calm down. I made Ben hand over the new key, which he pitched into a storm drain, so a cop forced him to fish it out. My mother threatened to disown me, like that's dire, and I sardonically said, "Oh no, I won't get to be mistreated at family holidays anymore." I put them all on the spot for every injustice growing up, denying me help when I was homeless, letting Ben and Harper ridicule me, trying to force me out of my own house after refusing even space for my camper at theirs. The officers stared daggers at my parents. My mother crumbled and cried, agreeing she was a terrible person. My father looked more defeated than ever. Ben, humiliated, packed up the kids. Harper tantrumed on the lawn. They finally unloaded everything, and as they left, my mother begged me one last time to do it for Ben, even bargaining for rent or for me to live with them while Ben had my house. No dice. Family now solidly sides with me. I hosted Christmas Eve for half the extended family. My parents weren't invited. Harper, still living with my parents, started passive-aggressive social media posts about how there's still not enough space and hinting for guilt. I suspect it's driving my parents crazy. Maybe they should buy a camper and let Ben have full run of their house. Then they'd do it for Ben. Update 2. A quick addendum. Several of you suggested getting cameras. I now have a Ring doorbell and a few security cams. I'm still financially recovering from the house purchase, but it's a must. As for not having Ben and Harper arrested, their kids need parents. Ben could lose his job if arrested, and Harper has a newborn. No need for jail. My revenge worked via exposure. Last Christmas, I hosted family. Everyone I invited showed up, some traveling over 3 hours. They congratulated me for standing up for myself, and I admitted staying in town because of work, not wanting to move back. It was a great evening. Of course, after 2 hours, my parents, Ben and Harper waltzed in, uninvited and smiling. I kicked them out, backed up by my uncle, my mother's brother, who berated them for the prior stunt. My grandparents on my mother's side confronted my parents for years of favoritism and said if they ever wanted to have a presence in my life, they needed to actually treat me like a son. They also addressed Harper's online whining, telling her to let it go. My house would never be hers. Harper did her bottled-up self-pity routine about needing more space for her kids and wanting to feel like a real mom. I shot back, probably too harshly, that she was no mom at all, since my own mother did most childcare while she just sat around drinking or spending Ben's money. Harper demanded if I was calling her a bad mom. I said the facts spoke for themselves. If she wanted out, she ought to use her degree and get a job. My mother already handled Ben's kids. Even Ben's 7-year-old son threw a tantrum, kicking me for making his mom cry and not letting them live here. My brother tried to drag his son away, but the rest of the relatives piled on. It became an accidental family intervention. Harper was sobbing, the kids were wailing, even Ben was almost in tears. After a massive shaming, my parents, Ben and Harper, left in disgrace. The party resumed. I even used the camper as a guest house. Christmas morning, I got kudos for being a better host than my parents ever were. Harper soon deleted all her pointed social posts, but soon after posted, then deleted, a complaint about having tried to get my parents to buy a camper to free up the house for Ben's family. My parents refused, of course. Irony. Things calmed down for me. I started hosting friends, and despite being terrible at poker, enjoyed a few fun nights. My future goals: maybe dip into dating soon. Ben, Harper, and my parents avoid me these days, acting like I don't exist. Fine by me. But I suspect they'll try something again eventually. Update 3. Well, the predictions were correct. My parents tried for money or my signature, albeit more pathetically than before. They contacted me for a public meetup. Total trap. but I was ready. Ben was there too, but mostly silent. The ask? Help Ben get an apartment, either with money or by co-signing and paying towards rent, since Ben's credit was shot. Imagine that with Harper's spending habits. I refused. Ben exploded. You have so much. Help me. I laughed, reminding them they mocked me for being homeless and never offered help then. I laid out that most of my income goes to bills and the mortgage, and pointed out that Ben's salary is actually slightly higher than mine. There's nothing spare. Plus, I need savings in case my 90s truck dies. I also refused to co-sign. No way I'd be on the hook if Ben defaulted. I noted my parents never offered to co-sign for Ben themselves, which shut them up. This time, instead of anger, my dad looked regretful, defeated. My mother retreated into awkward apologies. Dan stormed out. I offered a last kindness, buying unlimited soup/salad while we awkwardly chatted about anything but money. They mentioned joining a local church and invited me. I declined, and at least they didn't push. Since then, Harper's online griping continues. She's annoyed at not being queen bee under my parents' roof. Even going so far as to suggest my parents move into a camper just like I had, so Ben's family could have the house. Denied every time. Occasionally, I get messages from people I don't know, shaming me for not giving up my house. I block them. One persistent troll, likely the original anonymous caller, kept switching numbers, but eventually quieted down after I made it clear I considered them a joke. Update 4. Longer break since the last update. I got a Ring doorbell and some cameras after all the drama. Nobody's tried breaking in since, probably scared off by my prior public exposure of their antics. I rented out 2 bedrooms in my house, one to a close friend, another to his friend. They're great tenants, quiet, respectful, and the extra rent money helps cover my mortgage. Of course, when my parents and Ben found out, Harper stalked me, told them, and my mom came over in tears about it. My mom lamented that I could have rented those rooms to Ben and his family. I shut her down. They literally broke into my house. Nobody would rent to someone who had done that. There isn't enough room for all of us anyway, and I refused to ever live with them again after how they treated me. Harper, predictably, had another tantrum but finally gave up. My parents have stopped harassing me about the house. Now, here's the kicker. Harper's even worse than I suspected. Turns out, Ben's youngest child isn't even his. Harper had an affair, which several Redditors had predicted months ago. She's been ousted from the family. Ben just finished his divorce, and it went his way because our state is at fault. After their disastrous attempt to take my house, things at their home got ugly. Harper seethed, convinced I was rolling in cash and owed her some. It was her idea to gatecrash my Christmas party, try to guilt me, and engineer the money asks afterward. After the police incident and complete humiliation, her influence with my parents and Ben collapsed. My parents started going to counseling and even apologized to me in person after seeing an animated video of my Reddit posts. Yes, they know about this account. They acknowledged all their failings and called themselves out as narcissists, blaming Harper for a lot, but not denying their own part. Ben didn't apologize for a while, though he looked wrecked every time the past came up. Harper's marriage utterly fell apart, without me as the scapegoat and family ATM. Her own toxic behavior lost her even her last sympathizers. She kept harassing my parents about getting a camper/RV so she could have their house. They told her to knock it off. Eventually, Harper ran off with the baby for days to try to get her way. She failed. My parents started leaning into their newfound church attendance, perhaps trying to atone. Stace, update 5. Much of this is pieced together from Ben and my parents' accounts. Things reached breaking point when Ben confronted Harper about her affair, backed up with DNA tests. 3 of the kids are his. The youngest isn't. The baby, a lighter hair color, tipped him off. Ben had also gathered texts, call records, and identified the affair partner, a curly-haired guy. The evidence was overwhelming. My parents immediately threw Harper out. She went ballistic, getting physical to the point that the police, called by my mom, arrested her. My father and Ben got scratched up, and her oldest child got caught in the crossfire. Ben had recorded the confrontation, which helped police. Harper's parents bailed her out, then returned for the baby and her belongings. She promptly turned up at my door, unhinged and possibly intoxicated, ranting about my Reddit posts and blaming me for her family's breakup, claiming mothers of young children are sacred and that my refusal to give up my house was why her family collapsed. She tried to shove me and cover my mouth. I threatened to call the police, pointed out my camera caught everything, and ripped her apart verbally, calling out every single entitlement and bad action, telling her to never return. That was the last straw. I filed a harassment and assault report on Harper, supplying videos for Ben's lawyer. My restraining order against her sailed through. Harper stuck with her affair partner during the divorce, insisting Ben wasn't man enough anymore for her trophy wife standards. Ben responded with much-deserved mockery. She was forced to work for her parents' business due to her new record and resume gaps. And they reportedly aren't thrilled with her either. The divorce hit warp speed and went bad for Harper. She got partial custody, not even much alimony, and Ben got his name taken off the birth certificate of the affair baby. Update 6. Ben's lawyer helped him navigate the divorce at lightning speed, but at a cost. Harper, cornered, tried to fight back, but lacked funds and the law was not on her side. Her lawyer was paid for by her parents and not a good one. She actually brought her affair partner to court, who argued for alimony from Ben. The judge called him out for hypocrisy, and Ben prepared to sue for alienation of affection, but couldn't muster quite enough proof. In the end, Ben accepted most of the card debt, got his name off the baby's cert, and Harper ended up with partial custody, no alimony, and had to work for her parents to pay her own debts. She has barely bothered with her other kids. Ben, struggled, drinking to cope, but even in his worst moments, we found a little brotherly reconciliation. For 15 years, we'd barely spoken, but now, despite everything, I looked out for him, especially for his kids. Ben even asked to borrow my camper so his son could get his own bedroom in my parents' house. I obliged, strict contract photos and all, but didn't charge him rent since he's in bad shape. I got props from extended family, now being called the good brother Ben doesn't deserve. The kids have warmed up to me, and I finally get to be an uncle, which feels unexpectedly rewarding. Ben now lives in the camper in my parents' backyard, and at least the kids have a better environment. My mother is nicer, my father more withdrawn, but less antagonistic. Harper is gone, and they say they never knew what they saw in her. Ben also got his name legally removed from the birth certificate after a paternity test proved the other man to be the real father. Harper's affair partner tried to protest, but had no case. Both he and Harper have now locked their social media, and nothing more is heard from them. Update 7. Harper eventually saw my Reddit account, but can't reach out thanks to the restraining order, and likely can't afford a lawyer. She tried to get Ben to tell me to remove it, but Ben's read my posts and doesn't care. They're a reminder of his previous jerkiness, and he's not losing sleep over it. Now, my parents truly try to treat us equally around each other, though my father is a man of few words anymore. Ben's son now gets a proper space, and when Harper mocked him for living like a bum in the camper, Ben shot back that he was putting his kids first, something Harper never did. Her tantrums roll off him now. Harper has been acting nice to Ben lately. Maybe living with her parents isn't all it's cracked up to be for her. But Ben is done, he'll never take her back, and the very thought of her is stomach-turning. No news from the affair partner. Both his and Harper's profiles are private and likely will stay that way as long as I exist. Update 8. Early this month, someone, I suspect Harper, egged my truck at 3 a.m., but they were covered head to toe with big sunglasses. No way to tell for sure. At least they didn't cause serious damage. $15 and a couple hours of cleanup. The police think it's a random prank. I'd printed out photos and put them up in the neighborhood just in case. My tenants wisely stay out of the whole mess. This story ends right here. This story is an ugly but instructive look at the cycle of entitlement, family scapegoating, and narcissistic favoritism. With so much dysfunction, healing takes time, but sometimes standing your ground and exposing the truth is the only way to break free. I've got a question for you. Have you ever had to stand up to manipulative relatives or cut off entitled family members? What did you do? And would you do anything differently now? Share your stories below.